This is the Town of Saugus, zoning Board of Appeals, Saugus, Mass, Monday, July 14th, 2025. A continued public hearing on, let's get the others. 699 Broadway, no, 999 Broadway and 39 Rear Forest Street, and 961 Broadway. If we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Frank Federico.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can follow up with just a quick moment of silence for Ellie Benita. Ellie was like a matriarch up in Golden Hills, and she was also Captain Scott Phelan, who's worked on this mother, and Building Inspector Dan Kelly's mother-in-law. So if we can have a short moment of silence. Okay, this is like I said, the meeting of the Saugus, continued meeting of the Saugus Board of Appeals, and I don't have my script with me, so I'm doing some of this from memory. The way in which we run the meeting is informal. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce our board members. Bob Northup, Chris Riley, Frank Federico, Stephanie Morano, Peter Rossetti, and myself, Tom Travis. And tonight we hope to wrap some things up. I don't know.
Jesse's coming up.
Oh, Jesse's here, okay. We'll give Mr. Attorney Sherman a second to settle in. Take a second to settle in, Jesse.
The last.
Did you do the oath?
Huh?
No, we didn't do the oath.
No.
If you think you may speak tonight, I'd like to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And to get started tonight, I don't know, Lynn, would you like to start us off?
Sure, if you don't mind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lynn Sweet, LDS Consulting Group, Wellesley, Massachusetts, for to be consultant. On behalf of the team, I'm joined by Chris Alpin, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. Our client is here, Sal Palumbo, and our engineer from Tetra Tech, Sean Reardon. So at the last meeting, we were asked to provide some deliverables and follow up on some items. And so first we sent an email to the chair and council with the original Pell documentation, just to make sure that everybody had that electronically. We then sent a file with 4 or 5 documents in it that we believe are the final documents for the plan sets in the stormwater management plan. And then we sent another file to the town that had all of the documents that we were aware of, by discipline, whether it was civil or traffic, that we think have been submitted just to help the town get organized. We also sent a revised decision, and we also sent a markup of the waivers, which I'm hoping to go through tonight. I do have a clean copy of that. The waivers, we added a lot of information to the waivers with regard to design standards. It looks probably bigger than what it is. It's just that many of the standards are either subjective or they're just very broad. So out of an abundance of caution, we included a lot of waivers. Sean Reardon at Tetra Tech also did a much longer response to the DPW letter from last summer. We also did a letter that had the parking management plan and the stormwater management plan. And I have had, we sent Todd, who I think is here tonight, the most up-to-date documentation in a separate email. We also sent there was a bunch of exchanges with the building inspector who had some questions about handicap parking and other items. So we probably had 3 or 4 exchanges there. Did I miss anything? So we've worked really hard to answer the questions, kind of get everything organized. And tonight, you know, if it's your will, we're happy to go through the waiver list with you, because I think we covered briefly what we put together for the decision. Certainly your own attorney is going to expand on that if you so choose. But I'm happy to work on waiver unless there's something else you all want to talk about. Okay. Or I may not even talk about it. I may have Chris, who's our attorney, talk about the waivers. You may be,
Sean, do you
or
want
do you want to go
to go
through?
through, or we can go through it together?
Why don't you guys, you guys are going to be way better equipped than I am to go through the technical pieces.
Sure,
of
for the
it.
record,
So I'm gonna
Attorney
st-
Christopher
I'm gonna step
Alphen.
aside for now.
Do you have copies, Lynn, to pass out to the board?
I just did. Let me just see the,
Sorry.
it's okay. Throwing things around here. Is there any more? Nope. Jesse. One for you. Okay.
So we talked about the waivers. This is going to be incorporated into the decision and may be modified as the board sees fit, but these are what we're proposing for waivers. A lot of these are administrative waivers, so they're probably not even required to be requested because they're things like you need to apply for a special permit for a multifamily structure, things like that. Those are what we could call procedural waivers, and then there's a few, relatively not that many waivers when it actually comes to the structure itself and what we need waivers from. So if we just go through it, Article 2, Section 2.4, there's a building moratorium for multifamily dwellings. We're requesting a waiver for that. Table of uses, this many units are certainly not allowed in this zoning district without a right, so we're applying for a comprehensive permit. There's certain environmental performance standards, and we think that during the construction process, there's just some waivers we need for erosion and sedimation and noise, dust, debris, things like that. This is just going to be temporary, and it's just going to be related to construction. Obviously, the board has a lot of construction conditions incorporated into it, and that will be the controlling document. There's just general dimensional and density provisions related to the structure on the lot and setback requirements that have been all sorted out and shown on the plans. Hillside protection bylaw requires that all natural slopes exceeding 225% over horizontal distance of 300 remain in their natural state. We request a waiver from that. Housing numbering, probably not a waiver that we require, but we're doing it just in case, so that we can install mailboxes for a large project. Off-street parking regulations to the extent necessary. This is something that we discussed. We submitted a legal memorandum in response to the Hill attorney letter that we don't believe that we need any waivers for our property and that we are covered under the shared parking regulations, but to the extent necessary, we're going to request some waiver. Permit requirement. The applicant seeks a waiver from this section. This is just, again, related to the permitting process. This is administrative, probably not needed to be requested, but we're requesting it anyways. Same with special permits under Section 7. Same with Section 15. This is an affordable housing project proposed under 40B and the regulations under there. This is affordable housing requirements that we do not need to follow because we're applying under 40B. Same here, any sections under the business sustainable development zoning district, anything this is sort of just the cover-all. The board can decide to strike that waiver, but we're requesting just in case we're missing anything. And then dimensional and density regulations, again, it says that the property on Route 1 above 3 acres must provide 200 feet of frontage, and we do not meet that. We provide 90 feet of frontage, and therefore we're requesting a waiver from that dimensional requirement. Section 21.3 requires, is sort of administrative requirement again, requires compliance with all applicable requirements of the bylaw. That is being asked to be waived. There's a pre-application meeting requirement We're obviously asking a waiver from that. Again, just an administrative request. Section 2.15, administration. Again, site plan review. As you know, this board is the permitting authority for all permits, including site plan approval. That's true under Section 11, Section 2.16, 2.17, all the same things. Section 2.18, Section 2.19, Section 2.10, Section 2.11. That's all requirements under site plan approval, which we do not need to apply for because we're applying for a comprehensive permit. Then there's a section on design standards. We try to be as specific as possible with these and detail exactly why we're requesting the waivers. So if you go to section 21.12 and review the design standards, there's several items, which I'm sure our engineer can answer if you have any specific questions about it. But some of them were objective, some of them were objective, but we covered the basis and just tried to be as detailed as possible of what we're requesting waivers for, such as pitched roofs with a minimum of 6 vertical inches to every 12 horizontal inches are encouraged. So it's not a requirement, so we're not necessarily requiring a waiver from that. But just to cover our bases, we've explained how our project fits or does not fit those requirements, and if they do not fit, then we're requesting a waiver respectively. So I'm happy to go through the design standards if you want. They get pretty specific. I'm probably not the best one to go through them, but again, a lot of objective criteria related to the design standards. And you know, we're sort of in a unique position where we had a architect peer review come in and review the design, and they were happy with the design. Typically, you don't not necessarily have that with the site plan design, so it's an appropriate waiver under the comprehensive permit when you have a project that's being peer reviewed, opposed to somebody who's just applying for site plan approval, and then the planning board wants some sort of criteria to apply. Since we have peer review and everything's being reviewed by experts, it's an appropriate waiver to give. But as you'll see in those waivers, there's some criteria that we do try to meet. We do think that the design's appropriate for the location, but we're obviously requesting some waivers because out of clarity and out of completeness, we need to request them. There's some lighting standards that we're requesting waivers for. That's under the design standards, but we're meeting all the plans that are approved by the photometric plans that we submitted, and that was reviewed by the architect. And there's some requirements about loading docks. I don't know if that applies to us. Yeah. And then we're asking a waiver for development access standard. We request a waiver from section 2.13A23 to allow access as shown on the plans. Again, something that got reviewed by our traffic engineer, obviously, and the traffic peer review, and they said that it was sufficient. There's a couple general bylaws that we're requesting. So those are all the zoning bylaws. There's a couple sections we're requesting waivers from when it comes to the general bylaws. Again, this is just procedural and administrative requests because the Zoning Board of Appeals takes the place of all boards and committees and authority in the town. So as you see, we didn't request any waivers for any fees or anything like that. These are just procedural requests that we're making because the board is in the position to grant all permits. But if we were going to request fees from certain connections, this is where you would see it, and we're not requesting those waivers. And then there's just two specific stormwater management rules and regulations we're seeking waivers for. I know that was a question at the last hearing about what waivers, if any, we're requesting from stormwater management rules and regulations. There's just two that just don't make sense. We're seeking a waiver from the requirement that the stormwater management system be designed to remove 60% of the annual total phosphorus generated from the total construction of the impervious surface area on the site. It's just not practical for a project this size, so a waiver is an appropriate request. And there's an we're seeking a waiver that there was a request that there be a border around the retention basin, and that just doesn't make sense for this project because we didn't want to put up a fence. I think that was a request by another expert or something, but we don't have a fence around our retention basin, and so we're asking for a waiver from that request. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at the zoning board of the zoning bylaws, there aren't really too many waivers. You're waiving dimensional requirements and use requirements certainly, but beyond that, there aren't too many waivers that we're requesting when it comes down to it. A lot of procedural and administrative waivers that are being requested.
Any questions from the board at this point? Jesse, you have some questions, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have one specific question for the applicant's attorney.
Yep.
On page 6 of your list of requested waivers, you make reference in number 25 to allowing access as shown on the project plans. What are you referring to there? What is that?
As far as-
What specific plan?
Yeah, so that's a reference to the decision, so these waivers are referenced in the main decision where we list all plans and then we put them and define them as
Which
project
plans specifically are we looking to when the board is considering the decision? What is the name of the plan and the date we're looking to?
Well, I think the way that the decision is drafted is I list all the plans and then I define them as project plans, but we can
I
find
understand your
we could-
draft included it that way, but that's not the final decision. So
Yeah, that's okay.
what I'm asking for is the name of the plan, who prepared it, and the date.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just trying to open up the file right now for you, Jesse.
While you're looking for that,
It's in the file that I entitled Final Documents. There were 5 documents in it.
is it
And
the one that's included in your letter, John, dated July 7th?
No, it would be part of the April 18th set.
I'm just trying to open up a document, and unfortunately, the internet here is not as nimble as we want it to be. Here we go. Document open. There was one file that I sent that had 5 documents in it, and those are the 5 documents that are referenced in the draft decision as the final documents. Those are,
I mean, Sean, is there a particular page
Yeah.
or sheet?
Is it this April 18, 2025?
Yeah, I would suggest sheet C-401
Okay.
of the April 18th, 2025 set. And that's the Saugus Fire Truck Emergency Access Routes Plan.
Okay.
so the site plan that is in the final plan set is dated November 12th, 2024, and revised through April 8th, 2025. That is the plan set. It's under B3 in the draft decision.
Okay, and the letter that you submitted on dated July 7, Sean,
Okay?
your Exhibit A contains April 18, 2025 site plans. That's the plan of record?
Correct.
Okay, that was what I was,
And just a word of caution, that is subject to approval by DOT because that's a connection to Route 1.
yep, it wasn't the question specifically about that waiver, just generally when there's a lot of references to as shown on the plans.
Yeah, the best one is definitely the fire access plan.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, an additional question?
Yes.
For the applicant's attorney, I didn't see in that plan set that we were just referring to a proposed preliminary subdivision plan. How is the applicant proposing to divide the plan?
There is a lot plan that was part of the original TEL.
Well, I think the legal answer is apply for an A&R approval.
Lot plan.
So the the reason for the question, Mr. Chair, the board has the authority to sign preliminary subdivision plans,
Right.
definitive subdivision plans, and A&R plans. So what I'm asking is the method that they're proposing to divide the parcels. They can either do it by means of a subdivision plan, which would need to have a submission of a subdivision plan. And if they're requesting waivers of the planning board's rules and regulations, they would need to note that. They haven't requested any, so I'm going to assume that they're not requesting any. The reference to A&R plan, there was a plan filed early in the process that referred to A&R plans. The board is not authorized to endorse an A&R plan in this instance because one of the parcels doesn't have sufficient. So even though the board has waiver granting power, the waiver is not applicable for the A&R plan under the subdivision control law.
So we
So
are
the question, I
simply,
guess, maybe just to be more specific, the lotting plan, is that a preliminary subdivision?
it's
That's what
not
you're
a
asking to be-
subdivision plan, it's a lot line plan that we have asked in our application and will ask the zoning board to endorse. It's not a subdivision plan.
Is it a subdivision or an A&R? It's either
It's-
one of the two. Because it has to be endorsed by the board, standing in the shoes of the planning board. So it's one or the other.
It's a.
If it were a traditional application, it would be an A&R plan.
Okay, so for the reason I just explained, the board does not have authority to endorse an A&R plan where one of the parcels has insufficient frontage. That constitutes a subdivision. So therefore, it would be a subdivision. That's fine, but I'm just trying to determine what you're asking.
I've never, I'll be honest with you again, I'm not an attorney, I'm just a consultant. Whenever we've gone into towns, we've simply given them a lot line plan, and the zoning board has endorsed that lot line plan, and that is what gets recorded.
Chris, do you have anything?
No, other than the fact that we've submitted plans, I think that I'm
It
not sure if
should.
we have insufficient frontage on one of the lots. I'm not sure if that's
doesn't-
accurate. My understanding would be playing for an
The
A&R
only
plan.
thing that needs to comply is the office building, and the plans that we have created comply with the underlying zoning. Everything else is waivers for sheet 002.
See, I agree with you. The problem is, for an A&R plan, if any of the parcels depicted has insufficient frontage, it's a subdivision. So this board does not have authority to endorse an A&R plan that is actually creating a subdivision. It does have authority to create a subdivision if that's what you're asking the board to do. So I'm just asking which you're asking the board to do. Subdivision or A&R?
And then by process of elimination, it would have to be a subdivision plan.
Okay.
I just think that as a division plan, so.
Right, but an A&R means approval not required.
I never thought it would be an A&R plan, so it must be a subdivision plan. But
Now, Jesse, just for clarification, does this satisfy the requirements of a subdivision plan as submitted, or do we need to submit a supplemental piece of information?
In terms of the filing requirements?
Yeah.
Reviewed them recently, I don't know, but
isn't this, didn't we ask to have a
it's
signature
probably
block put on
close
this?
enough, I would think.
Right, because this is sort of the linchpin to the zoning. It's got the zoning table, it's got the parking summary on it, so it's a really efficient sheet for that.
It says proposed lotting and zoning summary. Didn't I ask you to give me one that had a signature?
That was done.
Yeah. I can check with Audie and Dwyer and see where the actual signature copy is.
Right, I mean, I think the question is, have we submitted something that the board can endorse? And, and I've never had an issue with that as far as what we submitted and the plan set that we submitted, that isn't sufficient enough to be signed off by this board. But it's fair to ask what we're calling it, and I believe you're correct, it's called a subdivision plan.
You said,
Good for now.
I have seen a couple of hands in the audience. Yes, sir.
Article 6, the bill protection. Can you explain to me the reason for the waiver, like why you asking for that waiver?
Right, so the hillside protection bylaw precludes altering slopes greater than 25%.
Yeah.
And we have slopes greater than 25%.
Right.
Probably half of our site is greater than 25%. So we're requesting a waiver from that to allow us to alter the site.
Okay, so what grade are you gonna end up being? I know you're greater than the minimum requirement. What are you gonna end up to be?
No, well, really, most of the grading is to create the fire access from Route 1 all the way up to the back of the parcel. So most of the change in grade is for the roadway and the parking.
Okay.
The buildings pretty much socket into excavations in the side of the hill.
Okay,
Everything else pretty much stays the same with the exception of the detention ponds.
okay.
But those are typically areas that are flatter to begin with.
And since you talked about the fire access, I was just gonna ask another quick question. That fire access is only accessible from Route 1 and exit out to Route 1?
Correct.
Okay,
But it has two barrels because it's called what's called a boulevard section.
yeah,
So it's got two separate roads.
yeah,
So in reality, that constitutes two separate means of access if we have two separate connections.
but it's always on Route 1?
Correct. Yeah, nothing back to Forest Street.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mark Kornitsky, I represent Logan Lodging, the hotel, and I just had one question. I understood that at the last meeting, I thought you looked for Attorney Schulman to take a look at the point that I made earlier on in the process. Dan Hill raised in his letter about the zoning nonconformity of the office building after the lot is divided, be it through the subdivision plan, and the shared parking and whether a variance is needed for the parking at the office building.
Miss,
You want me to talk about that?
Yes.
a little bit? So, through you, Mr. Chair, I sent a correspondence to you earlier today, and I apologize for not getting that to the board
I
members
apologize for not saying it.
earlier. Yeah, it was within the last couple of hours. So, the way that the applicant has calculated the parking, the shared parking requirements, in my view, is close but not exactly correct. So the way that I calculate the requirement for parking, they've indicated that there are 339 spaces in the parking garage. I'll take them at their word about that. I haven't gone up there and counted them. They have indicated that 125 of those are granted by some sort of agreement to Mr. Krenitsky's client, leaving 214 parking spaces in the garage that are available for the shared parking. So the way that the bylaw calculates the shared parking requirements is the board is, you're to consider the requirements for each of the proposed uses where the parking is going to be shared. So in this case, you've got the office use, which they've indicated requires 165 spaces, I believe. Correct.
Would you be kind enough to send us the letter that you're referring to?
It's correspondence between me and the board, it's attorney-client privilege. But I'm happy to outline my advice to the board now. So 165 spaces are required for the office use. The project itself is proposing 170 spaces on the project site itself. Those are not proposed to be shared with the office uses, or at least there hasn't been any information from the applicant indicating that those spaces will be available for the office use, which means that the project needs 146 spaces on the office building site to meet the zoning requirements of the bylaw, unless it's waived. The zoning bylaw for this proposed project would require 319 parking spaces. So by my calculation, the way that the shared parking needs to be calculated is first, the office use of 165 spaces during the most intensive hour, and that would be the 9 to 5 or 7 to 5, I think it is, during weekdays requires 100% of those spaces. During the same time period, the bylaw requires 60% of the required residential spaces. So I'm calculating 146 spaces needed on the office site, which means that 60% of those would be 88 spaces. So by my calculation, the residential use would need 88 spaces. which means that they're short by approximately 39 spaces. So what that means for the development is they've requested a waiver of the requirements for the parking count for the project. This board has the authority to grant that waiver. They would also need separately to apply for and obtain zoning relief for the office site, which is not part of the 40B project site, and the board cannot grant waivers for that. So that would mean they would have to come back to the variance granting authority, which is of course this board, to request a variance for the parking requirement for the office building site. That's something that the board can condition as part of its decision, but that's something that they would need to demonstrate. Alternatively, they could, I suppose they could correct the problem by making all of the spaces on the apartment building site available for the office use. And that's how the applicant is calculating the shared parking as if all of the spaces are shared, when in reality only 170 spaces are shared. So that's a little bit complicated, and hopefully you're able to follow that. But the bottom line is they're 39 spaces short. The other issue that I wanted to flag for the board's attention is that the shared parking requirements of the bylaw requires that the spaces be shared on the same parcel or by adjacent parcels under the same ownership. So in this situation, the 40B project will not be under the same ownership as the office building site. So they would need additional zoning relief for that issue as well.
Is this all in the letter that you've sent?
It is.
And it doesn't sound like it's insurmountable.
It's not insurmountable. This board has the authority to grant waivers with respect to this project. The developer would have to come back to you and request variances for the office building site.
And that can be put as a condition.
Yeah,
And we
in
can
my
so.
view. Yep. If they demonstrate that they have the variances prior to implementing the plan.
And that would
Chris,
be by
you look like
request.
you have something you want to...
Yeah, this is why I was pushing this topic, and thank you for the letter. 39 is a fairly large number. So when you say you could grant a variance, are we just talking about, are we talking about changing the numbers, or will there actually be additional parking spots?
Well, they've requested, it's not clear exactly what they've requested, but they've asked for a waiver of the parking requirements to the extent applicable. So
Yeah.
essentially what they're asking for is, in my view, in my interpretation of the bylaw, is a waiver for 39 spaces within this shared parking arrangement. I think it's important to note that there is testimony by the peer reviewers and the engineering consultant that the supply of parking is sufficient. Overall, the question is the arrangement of parking, shared parking arrangement, where you've got the office uses needing 165 spaces and then the residential uses needing 88 spaces, whether that's sufficient and how the board wants to condition that.
I've just looked at some of the other developments in town, and they're so tight, it's almost impossible to get around some of these places. This isn't 5 or 6 spots. It's a relatively big number. I get today, it's not full. We've been told that the office is at, there's no vacancy in the office. But things change. There may be something that goes in the office a couple of years that requires a lot more parking for whatever reason. And, as far as residential, what it takes for residential parking only goes up. I mean, you can drive down any street in town, they're lined with cars, every street.
Would you mind?
Oh, no,
I
not at
believe
all.
there's an office space on
Yes.
the east side in front of the office.
Excuse
Just
me?
so everybody knows, there's an office space or lease in front of the building. So if that gets taken, what does that mean?
Yes.
If I could clarify just for a couple of things. We've had extensive conversations with both the civil peer reviewer and the traffic peer reviewer. Both concur that we have adequate supply. So Chris, I understand your concern, but on several occasions, they've confirmed that this is just a question about compliance with the underlying parking requirements and interpretations thereof. I am still of the mind that we comply with zoning. As the zoning is currently written, we are required to have 355 spaces. Under the shared parking scenario, we have 384. That's all the zoning requires under my read, aside from what Jesse said from it has to be under common ownership. So if we were ever to sell the property, some other situation would take place because we wouldn't be able to take advantage of the shared parking scenario. The bottom line is the shared parking scenario recognizes that offices and residential have very fundamentally different use patterns in terms of needing parking. And it goes through a very, very explicit way of calculating the four or five different scenarios during the day where you have 60% office space and 100% of the residential space, or 100% of the residential space and 50% of the office space. So it goes through all the different scenarios and says you have to provide parking for the maximum scenario, and we do that comfortably. So yeah, in terms of the concern about there being adequate parking or whether we're 39 short, from a practical standpoint, we are not 39 short. From a interpretation of the bylaw standpoint, I'd have to review what your attorney says, because our opinion after reading the bylaw is that we comply with it. So if I could get an explanation of it, that would be great.
If someone mentioned this isn't insurmountable, maybe it's not, and maybe you guys can find somebody to
Well, I
recognize
asked
the
Jesse.
difference.
That was my question to Jesse.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, if I may make just, my last point before I sit down would just be that if you were inclined to grant this decision, I would just request that it be a condition that if the lot for the office is not in compliance, that they obtain a variance, which is an extraordinary remedy for something that is essentially self-created. If it's common owner coming in, creating this hardship, or creating this zoning nonconformity. So I would just ask that it be conditioned. I do not believe, I agree with Attorney Schumann's opinions about it. The only thing I would add is if the board were and the applicant agreed that there was going to be shared parking on the residential portion, that it not be illusory, that it be in fact available to the office building when needed. So that would be the only other piece I would add. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind just adding my 2 cents and more a question through you to town council is, if we're granted a waiver for parking on the residential use, why would we need a variance for business use?
The reason, Mr. Chair, is they're going to be requesting that the arrangement of parking be approved. That has to be approved on that site. This board can approve the arrangement for this project to use parking on other sites, but the board in this process can't approve the zoning relief that would be needed for this arrangement for the other site. So essentially, it's going to require, in my view, a site plan review process for the applicant to come in and propose that parcel, the approval of that parcel, and how everything is arranged and how it's operated. That's separate and apart from this.
Who does the site plan review?
Site plan is planning board.
Yeah, we
But
go
this is all having to do with the other site, not the 40B.
Okay.
Would there be CBA for variance as well, perhaps?
Zoning board is variances.
Through the chair, could I ask Jesse a question?
Yes.
So Jesse, by my calculation, the current office use requires 165 spaces. Under all scenarios, those 165 spaces are available for the office use.
In the garage.
The contemplated scenario is, at nighttime, when the office use is only allocated 9 spaces under the shared parking scenario, those spaces would be partially available to the residential space. Why is that a nonconformity for the office if we have 165 spaces for them?
So the way that the bylaw, the shared parking is calculated, you have to calculate each column,
Which we've done.
which you've done, and then the highest number, that's the requirement for all time periods. So your maximum time period during the day, it is true. That's the way it's written. The way that the maximum intensity period is weekday 7 to 5 p.m.
Which is the 355.
Three. Well, so the way that I'm calculating it is your office use 165 plus the 146 that you need on this parcel. I'm not taking into consideration non-shared parking spaces, only the shared spaces. So I'm considering the 214 spaces. The uses that we're using those are 165 plus 88.
So you're
60%.
excluding the non-shared spaces from our total
Correct.
parking count.
Correct. For the shared parking arrangement, you're calculating shared parking, not total. So that's why I agree with you, you have the parking supply, but for the technical compliance with the shared parking bylaw on that site, you don't.
Okay.
It's a technical,
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is something I've struggled with since day one. That's why I've spent so much time on it. And I thought I had it nailed, but I guess, you know, the opinions differ. Yeah. Yeah, our interpretation is the shared parking reference was to the section that it describes. You know, that's the shared parking section of the bylaw, not that all of the spaces need to be shared, because the spaces refer to total number of spaces, not anything specific to the sharing.
Situation here, because the reason why this section exists is because typically under the BHSD, you've got, say, a supermarket, you've got a bank, and you've got Buffalo Wild Wings all using the same parking on the same site. Where you've got an apartment building that's going to be a separate site under separate ownership with a completely distinct use, where you're not sharing parking between the two. It's really not a shared parking arrangement, except for the portion that you're sharing.
Well, it is under common ownership.
Well, once the project is developed, the developer will be a limited dividend entity. I assume you're not going to be owning the office
It's the same principle.
under this.
Yeah, but I guess that's the point, and we could discuss this right now, is under 5, it says all shared parking spaces shall remain on the same lot or adjacent lots held under the same ownership of the proposed development. Is the town dividing same ownership as the owner or related entity? I mean, I think that would be very unusual to say that the lot owner has to be exactly the same. You could have an LLC and a trust controlled by the same people that own different lots. That's usually considered same ownership for zoning purposes. This seems a little unusual to interpret it that would be different ownership. I don't know if that's the town's position.
That is the town's position. That's what it says.
So ownership requires you to be the same exact entity, even though the entity may be controlled by the same people.
Or on the same parcel.
Okay. Usually in the zoning interpretation, if it's controlled by the same people, it's controlled as one.
And this is just a question through the chair. Do you know how the 125 spaces that are allocated to the hotel are not on the hotel's parcel? Does the
That's a prior non-conforming issue.
Okay.
That arrangement was put in place before the market.
I mean, we'll have to work through it, obviously, but I mean, if I could just share an example. If we had 2,000 units of housing and 1,000 square feet of office, would the office have to share equally in all of the spaces for the residential use in order for the shared parking scenario to apply?
We'll just share them all. Easy enough.
Yeah, the same program assigned to them.
Everyone.
I don't think it's the best solution, but
I just want to clarify, Jesse, if you could. So what I think I'm hearing you say is they need to treat the apartment building as completely their own entity, just in case in the future they were to be sold off completely separate from the business building and the way parking. So like they needed 100 spots for residents, they would need to have 100 spots available at any time of day, no matter what, and treat the businesses as a completely separate entity as if they're not connected at all. Like, it appears as though they're trying to merge the parking together because it's currently owned all together under the same ownership. But if it were ever separated, then the person buying the property of the apartments would need to be somehow guaranteed that they have enough parking for what they just invested into. And or let's say they demolish the business completely, like literally raise it to the ground, and there's nothing left there at all except, trees and dirt, then they wouldn't have enough parking for that portion that they had. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, I think I'll say yes. I think
We have to satisfy the
it's
apartment
essentially
buildings 100%, like as if there is no shared parking, there's nothing else to work with.
no, that's not exactly what I'm saying. So the project is proposing 170 spaces on the development site.
Yeah.
The zoning requirement of 319, in order to meet that, they would need 146 on the adjacent parcel that they're proposing to have through the shared parking arrangement. that's what they need to cover in the shared parking.
But they're only shared because it's currently the same owner. So if it were to be purchased out, the apartment buildings by a separate owner completely, then what's the scenario?
Well, that's the reason why the zoning bylaw requires.
So realistically, the solution would be less apartments needing less parking. So yeah, you could join them together and they'd be lassoed together.
Well, the applicant
Whatever.
has very competent counsel and representatives. I won't tell them what the solution is. But, yeah.
Okay, I think I understand, thank you.
Plus the town's paying Jesse.
Yeah.
Jesse, could you specify on, did you say something to the effect that they could combine the two lots all together as far as parking and calculate that as one lump sum of parking?
Theoretically, they could, but they're not doing that because of the 40B, the technical requirements of the 40B. The project will have to be owned by what's called a limited dividend entity, which limits profits, and in limited circumstances, the state will allow there to be commercial aspects to a 40B that are complementary to a project. In this case, the applicant isn't proposing that to be the case, and I don't think the state would approve it anyway. But if they were to combine both into the same project, they would essentially have to lump everything together, and they would, in theory, be limited on their profits by revenues from the commercial uses as well. It'd be very, very complicated, so I don't think that's a solution.
So where exactly are we at, that we'd be writing conditions to deal with the parking?
This can be handled through conditions, I think.
Okay.
I'm satisfied that it can be, as long as this is ultimately the board's, it's up to the board once the hearing closes for you to assess the issue of parking, whether you feel it's sufficient. You've got advice from your consultant that it is, whether it's managed appropriately. The developer has provided a little bit of detail about how they propose to manage it. But ultimately, how it would be handled with variances or some kind of site plan approval or whatnot, that's something that the board could impose conditions requiring that takes place.
Space is shared.
Because, excuse me, but Peter,
But it goes site
But
plan
it would still
approval.
be the same shared.
That's a whole nother set of hearings. I don't know what that'll do to the timetables.
I don't know either. There's multiple different ways they could address the issue. There's also, it sounds like they're discussing amongst themselves whether to open up the 40B site for parking by the office. And ultimately, how they handle it is up to them, but the board can condition it to require that however they choose to handle it, that it be handled as a condition of the approval.
okay. Is the board satisfied with that answer, or? Because you're kind of still contemplating?
Hearing,
You look like it's thinker over there.
there is no answer. There's only discussion.
Yeah, all right. We'll discuss further, we'll handle, looks like we'll handle by conditions, and we'll get more into discussion on Jesse's mentioned.
I just, very plainly, I just want to hear why it's okay that we're 39 spots short. Like I said, when I drive to the other developments in town,
Which we were you talking about?
Essex Landing, it's impossible to get around there.
Yeah, that's just talking.
It's super tight. Well, that's one example.
I know.
You asked me, that's the example.
I know.
But the point is that the zoning bylaws exist for legitimate reasons. We're not 4, 5, 6 spots short. 39 spots it's a lot of cars. And, if someone has to get to the office, or someone has to get home, they're not gonna turn around and go someplace else if there's no parking. They're gonna find some place to park, on the boulevard, or a handicap spot, or a fire lane,
Hockey Town.
Mr. Chairman?
somewhere. And
Would
good
it-
luck parking in Hockey Town some days. They're over.
Would it be beneficial to ask our peer reviewer, based on Jesse's review of the bylaw, to confirm that his calculations were done in
It's
the...
already said, the peer review has already commented to it.
No, I understand that, but I want to make sure that the peer reviewer had the same interpretation as our council did, because if they're calculating it as the same as the applicant, the peer reviewer may have been calculating the parking wrong too, or if he did calculate it the same manner that our council did, and they feel that it's adequate parking, I think we need to heed the suggestion from our peer reviewer, since they're the experts in the field. But I think we should get clarification from the peer reviewer that it was calculated in the same manner that our council
Can we
calculated.
address that once we close the hearing, Jesse?
Well, you wouldn't be able to have additional information from the peer reviewer once the hearing closes. The peer reviewer, I don't know if he came out with the exact same number, but his last recommendation letter was, it did state that he felt that there was that the zoning requirements were not met. That wasn't his opinion that there wasn't enough parking. It's a question of whether the zoning requirements for that separate parcel are met. So his view was that there's sufficient parking. Was it 385 that you said the number? That's the number that he's saying is sufficient. The question is the portion that is shared, the 146 spaces that's shared, is that sufficient? And is it possible to manage that appropriately? So I think the peer reviewer does agree with me that it is insufficient from a zoning perspective, but he does think that it's sufficient from a numerical perspective.
And
Thinks there's enough parking.
if I could, we have places on site that we can build additional parking. We just don't think it's appropriate or necessary, largely because we have an office use that's been in use for years now, that we know how many spaces are used. Right now, there are about 200 spaces that are occupied full-time by buses. So that's more than the spaces that we are allocating to new residential use.
The buses remaining,
Excuse me?
are the best buses remaining?
Yes, they're 20.
No.
Going forward, no, absolutely not. No, the buses are gone altogether, but they occupy space 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So under the shared scenario, there's no spaces that are occupied 24 hours a day by any use. But we are confident that we have enough parking. We have the long boulevard section that has a big stretch of grass area along the side that we could very easily create 100 spaces or so if we chose to. But we don't think that's an appropriate solution.
That would impact the snow removal though.
Excuse me?
That would more like,
I mean, marginally, but the bigger problem is additional paved surface that's unnecessary and probably won't get used. Or worse yet, wouldn't get used by the people that you'd want to be using it. Other people would come in and park there because nobody else is using it. We'd much rather have it set aside as green space. We'd much rather have it, used for a more appropriate reason than, it might get used because, it's a little bit more convenient than the hotel than the garage for some people, but we largely think that the garage is the prime parking spots for the office use because it's connected by a covered walkway. Illogical that anybody would want to use the on-site parking, that they'd have to go through the residential building to get to the office when they could just walk through the garage, go through the elevator, go through the walkway to the office building. So, we're confident that we've got enough parking and that it's well situated for the uses, but we're not hamstrung that we couldn't provide more if we were required to. So, I'd prefer to stay in the category of where all the consultants agree that we have enough parking, given the palette of uses that we're considering. I'd rather not overbuild the parking and then find out that we don't need it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd agree with that. I'm not trying to suggest, add 100 parking spots to, make your lawn smaller or anything like that. I have heard some of our consultants say parking is sufficient. I just want to hear these two trains of thought reconciled. A large part of why this board exists is to grant variances for common sense, practical approaches or solutions to problems, maybe like this one.
Yep.
We do it with garages and sheds every week, every month. I'm not trying to say we can't do that here. I just want to hear why is it okay? I'm not getting that yet. I want to hear an explanation as to why you said it's practical. I need more than that. Explain why it's practical.
I don't. It's hard. So I've done it to our team like probably 50 times, and I'm still explaining it every day. So it all boils down to we've got two very complementary uses, which is we've got office and residential. office, so under the shared parking scenario, the entire office overnight is only required to have 9 spaces. So that just gives you an idea of that there is 0 use of this during the night. So from basically from 7 at night till 5 in the morning, call it. That's the peak period when the residential uses demands the most parking spaces. So these are absolutely perfect partners to do a shared parking scenario and reduce otherwise what would be just additional parking spaces. Certainly, if we had 100 more spaces, it would be more convenient, absolutely. What I want to do is I want to maximize the structured parking use, because right now the structured parking is a little dark, a little dingy. It's not the most appetizing parking, but it's the most environmentally conscious, right? Because what we have is we have 4 or 5 levels of parking, only 1 level is exposed to stormwater. So if we've heard about stormwater, runoff from paved surfaces is what pollutes stormwater. That's why we do treatment. If we can eliminate how much rain comes in contact with the parking, that's a win-win scenario. So if we can incentivize people to use the structured parking that's already built, that's less exposed to the rain, then we want to do that. If we find in the future that, to your point, that we are struggling meeting the needs of the parking, we can absolutely, there's no prohibitions to us building additional parking on the site. We have it. It wouldn't be great location, but it would be on site and it would be on the residential site. I would offer that you could condition the project that if in the future we were directed to do so, we could provide additional parking, or if we found for some reason that we couldn't meet the demands by managing the supply that we have, that we provide additional parking. Or we could land bank it or something like that. But I would hate to construct parking, paved surface, increase our stormwater runoff, and then find out that it just sits there and weathers and just gets worse and worse over time.
So you're suggesting that if you left the plan as it was today, and a few years from now, if the nature of the businesses in the office changed such that they needed more parking spaces for the office, through some request of the town, you could build additional parking spots?
Or through our own needs.
I know, but
right?
I'm thinking of a relevant thing that just got resolved a few weeks ago. There's a shopping plaza a quarter mile from where your place is. Mm-hmm. And that place has been potholes like this for years now. And it took how many years? 4 or 5 years.
What are we talking about?
The old Kmart. It was like craters.
Yep.
Well, the town doesn't own it. The town didn't have any right to go in and tell them to fix it, so they didn't fix it year after year. And it's the only supermarket in town. It gets a lot of traffic.
Okay.
Because the town had no lever to pull to say, go fix your parking lot. They didn't fix their parking lot for 5 years. So I guess my question still to you is, and to other members of the board, would it be reasonable to add a condition that the town would have a lever to pull in the future to ask you to build more parking?
Well, we did give you a parking and a snow management plan after the last hearing. I don't know if everybody read that. As far as there being a condition, I believe that we also have in it a post development parking count. I believe that there are already conditions that we have put into our draft decision. Again, your attorney needs to finalize it, but basically what you're asking for is if the parking is seen to be insufficient, then what do you have to ask for more parking? And again, there can be some condition that basically says the owner needs to remedy the situation within a 6-month period. That's very common. We see that all the time. So we're not worried about that. We're not worried that we don't have enough parking. We're not worried about any kind of a condition that post-occupancy, if there's an issue that we can't remedy the situation. That none of that is, and I think we've talked about this before, and we've agreed to this before.
Okay, so you're open to a condition that if the town were to ask you, claiming you had insufficient parking, you would add parking?
we would address the issue. I can't say that we're gonna add parking. Oh, stop, stop. Excuse me.
Okay, keep it
Have
with the
some-
board.
There could be 10 different ways. There's the hotel, they have extra parking. There could be, I don't know, we could build it. I'm just saying that you don't wanna be, you wanna basically say that if there is insufficient parking, that the owner will address it within a certain amount of time. Because we don't know whether this would come up in 5 years or 10 years or not at all, that's all. And so for a developer, you don't want to commit to an exact thing when you don't know what the answer is, but the will is that if there is an issue, we will find a way to address it and whatever, bring that back to the board if and when that happens. The lever that we're dealing with right now is your attorney's interpretation of shared ownership. That is something I don't think that we can, resolve tonight. I think conditions as far as the number of parking spaces and post-occupancy, I think that is already in our draft decision.
I understand. And so we
Yeah.
have consultants on the applicant side and on the
Yeah.
town side who seem to be in agreement
That there is enough parking.
that practically speaking, there is sufficient
Right,
parking.
and now you've got something that will go into the decision saying that there'll whatever be a post-occupancy, if there's an issue, it will be resolved. And, I'm sure your attorney will come up with some language as to, what will, how, a sufficient amount of time to have the issue addressed or resolved.
And I would suggest for consideration is, the way that problem will manifest itself is you'll have people illegally parked. Or so if we have maybe you could key it to a number of complaints in a year about illegal parking on the site, or if the police have to respond to an illegally parked car, or so, because that's how it's going to manifest itself. If we have too little parking, then what's going to end up happening is people will be parking along the roadway, or people will be parking in handicap spots.
And
So I think you have a trigger for taking action that's in line with sort of illegal parking.
But the plan that we have said that it's going to be worked out between the two uses. I also kind of want to address the question from the audience that you have a for lease sale sign up. Like any landlord, there's always a for lease sale outside there. Why not bank? And if something becomes vacant, you've got a list of people that are interested. Again, the building is fully occupied today, so I just want to dispel that rumor.
So the sign is lying.
No, there's every single building you
I can
run
answer that.
across says,
Mr. Warren he owns several properties that rent lease spaces. He might not have room in that building. He might have room in the building near
Exactly.
PBD or Danvers or whatever.
Yeah,
They're a leasing company.
yeah, it's very, anyway.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one point I would like to clarify on the peer review for MDM, the June 6, 2025 letter. I'd suggest that he did not agree that there was compliance with the parking. Clearly, Jeffrey Dirk, who works for the applicant, has said there's enough parking in his opinion. He's given his expert opinion about that. MDM has said, and I'll quote, defers to legal counsel and the ZBA with respect to the project satisfying the local shared parking requirements based on zoning, and if any waivers are required for the proposed project and/or existing office use, has no further comment. So I suggest MDM did not bless that there was sufficient parking in their peer review under the shared parking portion of the bylaw. The other point I would make, if there is a condition about the parking and the town having the ability to require the petitioner to solve a parking problem post build, that you look for the petitioner's agreement so that they don't just appeal that condition as uneconomic and get it knocked out by the Housing Appeals Committee. So I would just suggest that you look for an agreed condition on that, not just one that the town puts on in its decision. But I would again defer to Attorney Schuman on that. Thank you.
Are we ready to move on from parking?
I just have one
I guess
question.
not.
Hi, Anthony DePisa
Yes,
from
sir.
Gilway. Do we know, or has there been any examination of how many fewer units would be, or how many less units would need to be on the site so that there wouldn't be this shared parking issue? Because we're talking about how to deal with more parking based on the number of units, but we're not talking about having a fewer number of units. Thank you.
Our solution to any discrepancy on parking would be to build adequate parking. So right now, we feel we've satisfied the zoning and we've built a responsible level of parking. If directed otherwise, we can solve that problem. And I would say, in conversations with MDM, they were explicit to us. That they thought there was enough parking. They were actually surprised we were allocating 1.67 spaces per unit to our uses. They were surprised we weren't more down in the 1.25. So everything about our discussion was related to compliance with zoning and interpretation of zoning, not whether there was a sufficient supply.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may. In regards to parking, so I'm noticing the trash and recycling center in the garage with trash chutes on every floor. Can you speak to the trash process? Because my concern would be if you guys are using carts and wheeling them out, where are you going to locate them? Are you going to take a parking spot so that a haul truck can actually pick up? Or what's that process going to look like?
The way it's been discussed right now is, to your point, we have an internal recycling room and trash room. They come out and wheel out in carriages when the trucks come. The truck would pull up alongside of the road at the entry to the garage, and then the canisters we wheeled out of the garage at the time of pickup.
So you're not going to be stacking the cans out waiting for the haul truck for an hour?
Correct. They would be brought out to the hauler when they arrive.
That may actually be something that the board may want to consider putting a condition on, that they're not stacking dumpsters out for more than 2 hours on a holiday, because it's going to take a lot of real estate in the area.
And the road is sloped pretty steep.
Yeah.
We'd be chasing those down to Route 1 if we left the
Right.
road. Yeah. Yeah. So the plan is right now, we've got pretty good access from the building via at least two doorways in each building. So we have a couple different options.
Yeah.
The building at top is a little bit easier because we've got some back of house there.
I'm sure I could find it, but what's the clearance in and out of the garage?
I don't know what the clearance is. I would expect it to be on the order of 8 feet. The trucks would not go in the garage.
Not the trucks, but
Yeah.
like an F-150, that's not going to exclude potential tenants with trucks getting into the garage and utilizing that parking?
Typically, the trucks fit fine. It's when if they have light racks or something above them,
Yeah.
that becomes a problem. But then we've got
You're not going to do like a 6/8 or?
I wouldn't expect so, no.
Okay.
No. And in the garage, we have a couple floors that have really, really tall ceilings, or one floor that has really tall ceilings.
I know from personal experience, my truck doesn't fit in any garage in Boston, so that's my concern, is
Yeah.
basically taking spots away from people that may have trucks, so long as it's 8 feet, that should be.
Yeah, and I remember too, I think our interests are aligned on parking, because we've got units to sell and units to rent, so obviously, we want to make sure that the residents have enough parking, or else they're not going to want to rent the units, and then we're going to want to make sure that the parking is able to fit their needs, or else they're not going to want to rent. So I don't think our sort of interests diverge at all, or at conflict. It's just a matter of, we would like to build what we think is a responsible number of spaces in the most environmentally sensitive way, but we have the flexibility to build more should we need to.
Yes.
This might be very messy. I think this document we're looking at here is under A4.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
This is under, I believe it's the document we're all reviewing now, general layout and street pattern, under A4. And it references in part, talking about extending to the butter's property in logical locations as determined by the planning board. This, the way I read it, it seems as though it gives flexibility in the future to connect the property to abutters that are not owned by the developer, even though I know it's kind of the case. So when I think of butters, I think anglers, forests, and hockey towns. I wonder if anybody can clarify if that's being too vague on purpose or.
That's essentially what that means. In this situation, it talks about logical locations, so, you know, you've got the project site, there's a pond, the Angler's Pond down below, that doesn't seem to me to be logical. There's the residential abutters to the rear, all developed parcels, that doesn't seem to be logical, but there is Hockeytown, so maybe if this was being developed under the VHSD, maybe the planning board would require a connection to Hockeytown, but that's what this section contemplates.
But isn't also the back quarter where they're alleging to put one of the retaining, like, allegedly, you could buy a piece of property that abuts into forest and create a street out that way if you retain it.
There's gonna be no
I know
access
there's
to
not planned
forest.
to, but the writing is a butter.
I don't think the topography allows for access to forestry once the retaining wall goes in, and correct me if I'm wrong. Once the retaining wall goes in.
Yeah, it's pretty high, but so is the entrance. I'm just trying to assume like that the fine print isn't giving leeway to future creative solutions that would allow the builders to go kind of over and above what the current plan is, because it vaguely says in butters. The only one really right now would be Hockey.
Right.
Are you okay? We have been very clear from the day we filed our PEL, from the day we came in here in our opening hearing, that we have no intention of accessing Forest Road. We have no issue if you put that as a condition. Nowhere is it shown on our plans that we will be accessing Forest Street. My apologies.
Okay, so just following up on that, given that, why is this here? What does this mean, this A4?
I don't know what you're referring to.
It's in your draft decision,
Okay, hang on, let me just bring it up.
at the top of page 4.
Okay, hang on.
You might as well make it literal, if that's their
Hang on.
intention.
Sorry, it's hard for me to use my computer without my mouse.
Chris, is the waivers you're referring to or the decision?
Are you
Yeah,
on the,
so-
you're on the waiver or the decision?
This is the waivers.
Okay, you're
Sorry.
on page
Sorry.
4 of the
It's
waiver,
waivers. Yeah,
and which one is it?
24,
I'm sorry,
24A,
24A. Okay, hang
top
on.
of page 4.
Hang on, I'm getting there.
Right there.
24, hang on.
So
Okay, 20, I don't see
does
20.
this mean that you want a waiver from putting?
Okay, so
roads
this
up
is the one right
Hockey
before
Town?
the design standards? Okay, it says, the section imposes design standards for site plan review. The applicant requests a waiver of these design standards as follows. General layout and street patterns. Any streets or driveways internal to a development within the business highway shall be connected with internal streets or driveways of abutting properties. So we're asking to waive this for the exact reason that we don't want to connect to the residential
Yeah,
neighborhood.
that's what it looks like.
That's why we put that in there, yeah.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome.
Anyone from the audience? Yes,
Can you just confirm whether this plan does or does not account for, like, if any residents in this development might be working from home? Because I'm just thinking that sounds like it could lead to, like, it's based on the map, maybe 39 spaces of a difference now, but if someone's living there and they're not leaving during the day, I'm just not sure how that adds up.
that's all in the formula. How many people are gonna be living, working home, how many people aren't? It's all worked in the scenario, correct?
I can't say how, the traffic engineer and the civil engineer calculated it, but I can say that in our parking plan, we have basically, in our parking management plan that we submitted after the last hearing, we have said that for people that are parking in the garage for the residential use, that they will have a sticker that will basically say they cannot park there from 7 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, or 9 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. So that is part of how the residential development and the office development will manage the shared
Are you
parking.
saying residents has a sticker that says they can't park at home during the day?
They can't
No.
park in the office, in the office garage.
So just to answer that question real quick.
The office garage.
So the zoning contemplates at peak office use, so during the day, that 60% of the residential spaces will be needed. So basically 60% of the people that normally park in the residence are at home. So 40% off-site, basically.
Such as people working from home.
Correct, or, you know, people just staying at home
For whatever reason.
or stay-at-home moms and dads, yeah. But 60% is a significant number. I mean, that's, so of the 189 units, 60% of them would be home during the day.
But they have stickers that say they can't park in the garage.
No, so there's a very small component. In order to make sure that the 165 that are allocated is needed for the hotel, for the office, to make sure that those spaces are available at the time that they need to be available. Any of those shared spaces, I think, which was less than 20 or 30 of them, that would have been used by the residential people. So for example, say some of the 60% that are home during the day got home late the night before and parked in the shared office spaces. They would just have to move out of the office spaces before the morning into an open space on site.
Exactly,
So-
thank you.
Where would they go?
Sorry, I didn't
Excuse me?
explain that.
Where would they go?
They go to the residential spaces that get vacated by people who are going to work.
That's assuming people.
It's kind of rude to laugh because this is a very considerate, thoughtful zoning bylaw that's been developed for shared parking, which is incredibly thoughtful and incredibly responsive. So before you dismiss it, I'd suggest you understand it. It's a very simple principle. The office doesn't need any parking at night. And overwhelmingly, the people that are at the residence are off-site during the day. So the idea is to share that parking in the most efficient way possible. Your bylaw does a very elegant job of doing that. And that's the goal. And your consultants agree, we have enough parking to satisfy. It's just a matter of managing it responsibly. Unfortunately, if we had just a regular zoning bylaw, we would have to build all the parking for the residential and all the parking for the office. And you know what? At least during half the day, half that parking would not get used. So what we're saying is, using your bylaw, we share that parking so that by just responsible sharing policy, we can make sure that everybody has a parking space when they need it.
Yeah, but if they're two separate entities, you would need 100% parking for the
That's separate.
apartments.
That's a separate issue. This is a zoning compliance versus a practical need issue. If the question is, if we have practically, excuse me, please. If the question is, do we practically have enough parking to satisfy the two uses? Unequivocally, yes. If the question is, do we have enough parking to satisfy zoning? My opinion, and as has been on the plan since day one, that we comply with zoning. Your attorney's position is different. We're certainly willing to do that. My statement to you is that should we be required to build additional parking, we can do that. I would prefer not to. As a professional, I would prefer not to because I think it's going to be wasteful. And I'd hate to be saying 10 years from now, pointing at an unused parking lot and say, see, I told you, but I'd rather just build the parking that we need now and then have the comfort of knowing that should we need it in the future, we can certainly build it. And we'll probably be coming to you to ask permission to build it because the residents would have expressed a need for it.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience?
Mr. Chairman, is this just on the parking issue, or is it in general?
Now just parking. Emails on the parking issue, all right,
Well, I wasn't gonna speak, but I will.
okay.
Dory Duggan, Braycott Road. It just seems like every one of these meetings, it keeps coming up, parking. We've had 4 different opinions on what it is. They keep changing it, making it look like we can fit a square peg into a round hole. And it just seems like at some point, someone has to not just say, we can get a waiver for that, because it does affect people. He said not to laugh, but how would you like to?
I don't think Mr. Reardon's opinion's changed.
I know, but that's what I mean, everybody has their own opinion. The attorney did say tonight what his opinion is, but it seems like parking just keeps going and going. And now they're saying there'll be a sticker for some person to come home and have to move out in the morning.
You're missing the
That's why.
point altogether.
Okay, I'm just saying, it just seems like
That's
parking's
the
been
office
going
building.
on
The
for a
office
long while.
building Yes.
And we keep trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
That's for the office building, yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Miss.
I think there should be like just a breakdown between the two, and the attorney may be able to clarify this. But my interpretation of this is we're looking at two different scenarios. One being, is there suitable parking the way the building is structured with the amount of units? Yes or no? And it sounds like that is yes, based on our peer reviews. Is there suitable parking based on our zoning bylaws? And that may not be the case. But either way, based on what our peer reviewer said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is how I'm interpreting currently, based on what our peer reviewer said, there is adequate parking for the number of units and tenants there. It just does not meet the Saugus bylaw, and that's what this board's authority is to do, is to grant relief in that regard.
Yeah, that's an accurate summary. And, just to further add to the point, it comes down essentially to the shared parking. Technically, it doesn't comply with zoning, so they need relief for that. The question comes up then, because they do need zoning relief, is these questions that are being asked about how specifically are you going to manage that shared parking to make sure that it works, where if we're getting a little bit of detail that there's going to be stickers that say the tenants can't be there past a certain hour. I would have liked the parking plan to have had a little bit more information for the board's benefit on how that would be managed. For example, what happens if a tenant is there past that time? Are they going to start towing people? It's this kind of a parking plan in this situation, it calls for that kind of detail, I would say. So where the applicant hasn't provided that so much at this point, it's up to the board to determine how appropriately to condition that to make sure that it works properly and that you're satisfied and that you have all the information you need to do that.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience on parking? All right. If we can move on. Sir, you had something?
Sure. Keep my comments brief. Good evening, members of the board. Chris Sullivan, I represent the Malden Anglers. I'm new counsel. I've been ramping up on this project, and I just have a few comments. One, I know there's been a request to continue this hearing, and from what I could see a little bit on some of the video that was up, it wasn't well received. But I would make that request again. I mean, just today in this one meeting that I sat in, there's clearly a lack of understanding on one, or consensus, I should say, not understanding on one issue. And it seems to make sense to continue the hearing. There's a lot of people from the public. I'm sure there'd be more people here if you had it back. I think I went to one hearing in the other building, which seems to be much more appropriate because people should be able to participate in the zoning board. You're all volunteers. You also are members of the community, and I think other people want to comment. And my only comment, respectfully, to the developers: what's the prejudice? I mean, what's the prejudice continuing the hearing for another 30 days or 60 days? I mean, how are they harmed? They're not harmed. So at any rate, and I do say that respectfully, so that's my one request, because I think it makes a lot of sense for not only the issues raised today, but for other issues. I look forward to trying to meet with the interested parties, their counsel, formally, informally. I'd like to work with them to make a better project, perhaps a smaller one, a more neighbor-friendly one, a more environmentally friendly one, particularly on behalf of the anglers. I know that Mr. Hill presented a letter, which were some issues that, from what I can see, didn't seem to be addressed in the response. I would make one small point about peer reviews, and again, respectfully, peer reviews, they come and they go, like any expert witness in any litigation. I'm not going to say a dime a dozen and be insulting or anything, but perhaps they could look at the argument here tonight and maybe, file a supplemental one. I don't know how much the cost would be, but it clearly seems there's been an issue raised. Perhaps they should have time to look at that again, and that leads to the point we should continue this hearing. Let the peer review absorb some of the arguments tonight on parking, give us more time to look at other issues. And as I make the request, and I know that there's a limitation on what the board can do, but I don't see any prejudice to the developer. I mean, it looks as though a project will go forward in some, fashion in the future. What's 30 days to them? That's just my personal opinion. I would also like to say that I think working together and making this more environmentally friendly for the anglers, at least for my client, makes a lot of sense. And I think we would all like to avoid any future litigation. Let's try to work now. Let's try to get a consensus now, get an agreement between the interested parties. And I know there's limitations on what the board can do, and I'm sure their counsel will, advise them accordingly. But at least with the interested parties that are not members of the board, I think we should talk and start a dialogue. Otherwise, we'll just be in Superior Court. So thank you.
I have some comments. First, Mr. Hill came into the game 5.5 months after we started, and you're coming into the game 6 months to the day from when we started, and now you want a 30-day extension. Where were their council 6 months ago? If you can you answer that?
Well, no, I understand that some of the
5.5 months it took Mr. Hill to get involved, and now you're 6 months to the day.
Sure, but some of the representatives from the anglers on their own attempted to, I think, speak publicly, and they're not attorneys, they're not experts, they're not engineers. So I really can't answer that question, but I can say that it wasn't as though they ignored this issue.
And I don't think one angle can say that we didn't let them speak, we didn't give them the time to speak and to put their viewpoint forward. If they don't feel they were heard right, please let me know now.
I don't think it's a matter of being heard, but at the same time, it's also a matter of.
You didn't like what you heard.
No, I don't think that's.
We were always respectful.
Just finish.
Yeah, I don't think we're suggesting that we were heard, but at the same time, we had to consume a whole lot of documents that we're not exactly expert in as well. And as you know, a lot of them came at the very, very last minute. So it took us a little while to recognize that we did indeed need legal counsel. As to why Dan isn't here, which is what the 5.5 months was. Okay, he was unable to continue to represent us due to other scheduling issues. So, and Mr. Sullivan has been.
It wasn't the scheduling issues. It was the fact that
it was a conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest.
Right. So, I mean, I can't answer that any better. I just made my few points that I think are important, that you've got unresolved issues, and what's the prejudice? If there's a prejudice to you, Mr. Chairman, if there's something you personally, or is there something that you, as a matter of policy, feel that we need to get this decision done because we need to get it done for some reason, I understand that, but I'm just saying, looking at the developer, whether construction starts in 30 days or 31 days, I don't see the harm to them.
Well,
That's my simple point.
That's not the standard
Okay.
under 40B.
I understand, but I'm just making my comment. This is a public comment.
I can hear from the developer's attorney or representative about what they think about an extension of 30 days.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, I didn't come here for an argument. I
know
just
you-
came here at public comment to introduce myself for the whole purpose that perhaps, myself and counsel over here, we could become buddies here, and we could work out a deal with somebody else, or we could talk, respectfully among ourselves. That's all. I didn't come for an argument.
I think respectfully, we're allowed to use the full the full 180 days, okay? Even if we take it down to 5.5 or 5.9 or whatever the month it is necessary to do that. We are able, and within our rights, to be able to seek legal counsel and assistance if we need it.
Right, you have to understand too, we don't just grant 30 days. The developer has to go along with that.
So, so I'm sorry that you haven't been here for the last 6 months. Our team has worked really hard to answer the questions of the board, to peel back the layers, to provide documentation, to respond not only to your peer reviewers, but to the questions from the board and to the questions that were raised by different department heads. Over the entire 6 months, there has been an incredible amount of back and forth. The project has changed to address concerns. We're never going to make everyone happy. That is just the nature. Change is really hard. At this particular point in time, as far as we're concerned, there was one issue raised by your attorney that we don't feel that we can address and respond to tonight. I think everyone, again, is in agreement that there is enough parking, that there will be a remedy in the decision in the event it isn't adequate. There is a question from your attorney, his interpretation of the shared parking bylaw with regard to the ownership use. We would like, although the hearing period is over tomorrow, unless there are no other surprises from your counsel, we would like a couple weeks to respond to that so that the board can see another side of that, because the last thing that we want is a decision that is going to require a bunch of variances. We had not planned on coming in tonight to asking an extension, but this is a new issue that's coming in, obviously very late in the process. We've been asking, you've been asking for several months now for an interpretation from your attorney. So we will grant a short 2-week extension so that we can provide our response, because we're concerned about having conditions that would make the project uneconomic, that would push the project into litigation, because we don't believe that the decision should impose requirements on the office building. And like I said, it's brand new information, and it's put us in an incredibly awkward position. It's put you in an incredibly awkward position to have just learned this information. So that's where we are at this point.
So I think we're willing to
Paul,
extend,
Chris, I'm
we're willing to extend the public hearing process in order for council and I to discuss this parking situation so that we can make sure that we get it right, and make sure that the conditions related to the parking and/or waivers are correct, and/or the legal interpretation is correct. So I think that that's appropriate.
So what's gonna?
And the other thing is, we also will get you a lotting plan from Audie and Dwyer that will be subject for signature as well, and that way we will address the two things raised by your counsel. I just want to confirm that there are no other issues that have not been brought up at this point that are a concern to the board or your attorney.
Yeah, we've only covered parking. There's other topics.
There are more issues?
Well, I have more things to discuss.
Okay, let's go ahead and
Well, it's good that you know that, at least, when you discuss these other issues, that there's going to be a 2-week buffer, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
a question for council. Do we have to make a request to them and then they approve it formally, or by them saying we'd like a 2-week extension, that will suffice?
They have indicated that they are agreeable to an extension. You don't have to request it at this point. I think you can vote on it. They've agreed to it. They'll need to put it in writing, and I'm sure their counsel will. The question for the board is whether you feel you need additional information on this parking topic or the other topics to extend it.
Thank you.
What are the other topics you want to discuss, Chris?
Okay, so still on the waivers, not necessarily the parking, but on the waivers. Some of these are very broad, and I know the attorney went over, quick 5-minute review of these waivers. This is an administrative thing, that's a blanket thing. But this cuts out a significant portion of our zoning bylaws, right? It's a significantly sized document. And I would like to see some specificity as to why do you need this waiver? Why do you need that waiver? One by one, I'd like to see some justification for that.
Sure, one thing I would point to is oftentimes we incorporate the zoning table to review exactly what we're requesting. So if you go to the plan site, there should be a zoning table there that will show what is required and what we're actually showing. And that will provide some specificity. We can certainly add that to the waiver list so that the zoning table gets incorporated. Along with the use and then obviously the parking, there is the stormwater regulations. I don't know where else we can be more specific. We try to be as specific as possible when it came to the building design standards, but we're happy to look at the waiver list in its totality to make sure that that's accurate. And again, we're happy to make sure that the zoning table is in there and it's accurate and precise about exactly what we're
Chris, if I may, to your point. On page 4, B14, to Chris's point, it says, blank wall shall not be permitted along any exterior wall facing the street. I'm looking at your 3D renderings and I'm not seeing blank walls. So, just as Chris mentioned, like, there is a disconnect between why you're requesting it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you weren't privy to the discussion we had, but the issue is that the back of the building essentially faces forest, right?
Correct.
So we don't think we have any blank walls facing either street, but it's still very early in the design phase, so we were trying to be overly inclusive. And that's sort of the same thing about the lighting. Whether or not you can see lighting from the street, presumably you're gonna see the lighting that goes up the driveway from Route 1. So we just, we're trying to be overly inclusive, and we can certainly add a note as to why. I don't think the note should be included in the decision, but we can give you a list of notes as to why we included it. Half of it is procedural waivers, and half of that is design standards. Outside of that, there's a handful of dimensional waivers. It looks like there's more in there, but we will give you our train of thought as to why we included it. That's an easy thing for us to do.
I'm happy to, sorry to interrupt, I'm happy to divide the administrative waivers from the sort of substantive waivers, and separate the two and show you the difference between what we're requesting and what.
Yeah, I'm not trying to drag this out longer than it needs to be, but we want to understand what we're approving. As someone said, we're volunteers, we don't, speaking for myself, I don't have the bylaws memorized word for word, others might. If you can give us some justification, point us in the right direction, so we know what we're approving, and we can come back, whatever next time might be, and ask any specific questions. I mean, for example, if it says, we want to waiver around no blank walls, walls are going to be just bare concrete facing the residents for the next 80 years, I'd like to know that. Okay.
Some of those things are issues that come up in planning board hearings.
Yeah.
And for example, on the resident inn, the issue of blank walls and things like that, and the architectural design was a big discussion. So that's where that came from. They're trying to modify things so that it will meet a variety of concerns. That's the blank wall issue.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean, after we all go home and after the project's done, the residents have to live with it. And a lot of what this board's trying to do is look into what might happen in the future. Because all we have in the end are the words on the piece of paper, right? I just want to understand what they are, that's all.
We have no problem with your request. We'll do the best that we can.
Thank you.
And Chris, you also have the added benefit of you have the plans and the architectural drawings as part of the permit. So if we seek to change those in substantive ways, we'd have to come back to you for a permit. So you have an architectural design that your peer review reviewed that shows windows on all 4 sides of the buildings. If we came back and said, no, we want to get rid of all those windows on one side, I would consider that a substantive change, and it would require the approval of the board. And I think your attorney would probably agree with that.
You still going, Chris?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay. I don't think we received anything from the fire department, truck turnaround.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't gonna apologize.
My
apologize.
I know it's in the
apologies. Draft decision that will meet whatever the fire department says. But
my apologies. We did submit, we got the measurements for the ladder truck. We did submit the new turning radiuses. We did speak, I believe, to the deputy chief, but the chief didn't get back from vacation until today. We haven't had everything is fine, right?
Scott Phelan's
Yes.
Yeah.
mother died, so that's why he's out.
Right, so we've dealt with we can't deal with the chief, he's not, but we, yeah. But Scott was fine with it, so as far as we're concerned, we've done everything we possibly can. And we complied with, getting the new fire truck, submitting the turnaround, getting feedback from the fire department. If somebody wants to follow up and check that we did have that conversation and they're okay, please do. But we did follow up, and I forgot to mention it, my apologies.
I don't doubt it, but just, we need a letter, some communication from the fire department that says it's good.
Well,
Right?
yeah, it's just
Is that something we can ask for from the fire department?
give them a day or two.
Yeah, we don't need it
Yeah.
today.
And we can help with that too, so we'll
Yeah,
talk
he'll-
to the chief and get it from him. We have something from the deputy.
Scott's out probably through Thursday.
Yeah. We'll have something for you next
He
time.
might be by the end of the week, but I don't,
Is it okay that we get it from the deputy?
yes.
I think that's.
Assistant Chief Dion probably?
Hill?
Collins.
Who's
Dion's the assistant chief.
maybe listen. Okay, Hill.
We'll do our best.
I see you. Yes.
I just want to revisit, I don't think we've actually, or I've heard exactly, the commitment to the maximum stories on the top grade that ends up abutting Forest Street. I believe 4 stories was supposed to be in the bylaws, and we're pushing for 6.
That's the whole thing about 40B,
Yeah.
is we don't have to follow the town guide. We don't have to follow the town.
Well, the state doesn't, or the town?
40B, you do not have to follow the town zoning bylaws.
Yeah, but aren't we, like, just within the town right now, this discussion, wouldn't that need to be until they go to the state? Or no?
The state allows you to deviate.
What 40B does, it allows you to deviate from the zoning bylaws of a particular community. I'm saying that right, Jesse?
Yeah, so essentially, with the 40B process, with the board, once the hearing closes and you start deliberating on your decision, what you're going to be considering is whether there's a need for affordable housing, whether there's a local concern. You have to weigh them. And if you find that there's a need for affordable housing that outweighs local concern, or that there's no local concern, then you can waive the zoning bylaws and other local bylaws.
Is that anything?
Yes and no. I mean, I feel like I feel like the people that are representing this project are forcing and,
Well, that's why they went 40B, so they
well, I
can.
know, they're circumventing what should be happening. We understand that as a community. But there's also, I appeal to the board, I guess, that the reality is there should be, because we've been trying to like make this work and mold this into a project that works for the community. And there should be some reality as to like how high is too high, or maybe tweaking the plan and moving one of those apartments towards Route 1, where it's less looking at forest, et cetera. It triggered in my head because Lynn was just saying like they're still kind of working the plan, the actual design plan in a certain way, so.
I think the design plan's been set for a while.
The design plan is set, but obviously the architect needs to do construction drawings and everything like that. So, they're at a point where we know what the structure is gonna be, but there's mechanicals and, all of that kind of stuff.
I mean, that little sliver off the top, you're talking losing money, I get it, that's your ultimate goal, is to get the money in your pocket, but it also then rectifies the parking reality. It also helps to appease the neighbors. It helps take all the drama out of all of this, and it just is a pretty realistic way, instead of just going right to the Benjamins, why don't we think realistically for the community? Like, it's just common sense, and it's very frustrating that we keep going around, as all of us are sick of being here and hanging out together this much. Like, I get how it works, I get that we're trying to like, let's go 40B, yay, like, but why don't we do it smart? And why don't we also use those properties and build places that are already cleared or raise other buildings, which we've discussed before. It just, there's the law, there's reality check, there's lifestyle of your neighbors, it's being respectful to your neighbors, it's not shoving it down the community's throat. I mean, there's so many ways that we could look at this, and it shouldn't have to be like, who are the big wigs at the top of the list that are gonna make the most money off of this, that are gonna end up affecting the rest of us? It's just not appropriate. And I'm just.
That's unfair to call.
No, that's just the reality.
That's not
They want to make money, that's fact, right? So they want it to be as big as they can. I get it, but maybe make it big also over here.
It's unfair,
divide
they're
and
business,
conquer.
they're business people, it's unfair to.
Well, I live here. I live right behind the thing. It's gonna be fucking in my backyard while I'm in my pool. Like,
And they own the farm.
it's apples and oranges. We all want a little bit of peace, and we've been holding this for a while, and we've come to some good adjustments, you know, with wall height and whatever, and we've collaborated. We've snarked at each other, and then we've collaborated and back and forth. But at the end of the day, I get they want to make money, but I also want to live in an environment that's not made of cement. With issues that happen because it's too much cement and the rainwater doesn't have somewhere to go. And the salinity doesn't come from the sky. Like, there's things that are going to affect the neighborhood. And my one last thing for whatever the last time we all meet is that I have not heard who is actually going to hold the escrow to pay for any foundation damage when they start having to build. Because I know it's going to happen eventually, but I don't want to have an issue with my property because something gets broken.
There's
I
gonna
wanna know
be,
who
regarding
can hold that.
blasting, there's gonna be a condition.
Okay, so I want the name of the person holding that revenue.
It's all spelled out.
All right.
We
so
all
that-
spelled out.
That will be my final.
Blasting companies, insurance. Please, we don't need a clause.
Well, it's just.
No, we don't need it.
That was pretty good.
No, we don't need it.
If you were living right next door to me, you'd be frustrated too, because we need to work as a community. That's why we're here. That's why you donate your time. Not so people can come in and just make skyscrapers everywhere. Let's make them quaint and cute and put a coffee shop in and put parking in a park and whatever you want to do. I love the concept. But let's make it correctly because we're forcing like 70 pounds of feathers into a 2-pound bag on a piece of rock that is going to be hard to explode unless we get the gas line, then everyone's, problems over. Yeah. But whatever, I digress. Ariel.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we have the town engineer here, and I know there was some questions that they previously had. I would just like to ask if all those questions were answered and were sufficiently so, through you, if possible.
Sir, there is,
You have to
oh, I knew where you were.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So Todd Waldman, town engineer. We have communicated. I did put a couple emails together. Did you get them?
I don't think, when you send them.
Well, there was one at least a week or so ago. And then I just because I wanted to make sure,
Yes,
I sent another one today.
I don't think I saw it today, so,
It's just about the same thing. Most of what I'm requesting is I'm requesting that the board adds conditions, specifically concerning, I have a kind of a rough list if that would help the board, but I also submitted it as an email if it's easier for you to include it as an email and, because I know it's easier sometimes to go with written documents.
sure.
Whatever the board would prefer is how I'd proceed.
Did you copy Jesse on that?
Yes, I did.
We didn't get a copy of it either.
You got the one from like a week or two ago.
Yeah,
You
but
didn't
not
get the one this,
conditions. Yeah.
you did.
Today?
No, well, you didn't get the today one,
Okay.
but the one from 2 weeks ago, there's very little difference between the two.
I thought that Sean had done a response, no?
So he did respond, but there's certain things that that you guys had said that you're willing to accept as conditions.
Conditions, oh.
And I'm requesting those to be conditions.
Oh, okay, got it.
But there are things like like the sewer.
Yeah,
I'd like I'd ask the board for the sewer and water if there were any issues to be determined, because you can get your sewer off your system, out of your site, but if our system can't handle it, your development would be responsible for doing upgrades, financially responsible, and studies to help with those. You're not one house tying onto our system. You're a whole bunch of units. And just because you can get it to our system doesn't mean our system can handle it. So I would be requesting the board, and I've got this in the email, and if there's any questions, I can either follow up or I can attend other meetings if that's helpful. But
And I guess the one waiver I'm looking at, I guess I'd request the board not waive the environmental performance standards. Those are pretty standard construction standards. I don't know. I mean, I'm reading here, you're requesting a waiver of sedimentation, erosion control, noise, and dust debris. That's stuff we require from everybody.
What page are you, Russ?
It's in the stormwater management report covers all of that.
So then you're already doing it, so why do you need a waiver?
Todd, I think that's because we've got conflicting things. So we're gonna have a NIPD's permit.
Yep.
So we're gonna have to comply with the NIPD's permit. We just don't want there to be any sort of.
So I've had plenty of projects come through that have a NIPD's permit that don't request this to be waived.
I haven't identified anything in the environmental performance standards civil related that we need to waive, except for the two that we noted under stormwater. So,
and part of that is I'd like to, I'd request that the board does not waive the local stormwater.
I think you gotta work out with Jesse and Sean.
Yeah,
The three of you.
So we have been talking, and they have produced a significant amount of material. They've improved things significantly on my part.
Okay.
There are some waivers I think we agree on. I mean,
Yes.
not waiver. Well, there's some conditions I think we agree on that I believe the board, or that I'd like to make sure I communicate to the board, make sure that the board's getting my communication. But there's several conditions that we effectively agreed to. I just want to make sure that they end up in the final documents.
I had thought that when we had gone through, I apologize, sorry. I thought that we had gone through all of the peer reviews and the emails and added those into our conditions.
from the peer reviewers. So
Okay, so this is-
Todd had maybe about 15 suggested sort of conditions
Okay.
that we said, yeah, that's fine. So Todd just wants to make sure that those conditions get
Okay,
into
so
the
those
board.
get in
So
after
they're either in his
this draft.
letter or they're in
Okay.
my letter responding saying we're amenable to
Okay.
that condition.
I mean, the few items like the sewer is, that's something, so,
Yeah, we are not requesting a waiver on sewer.
Okay.
So, yeah.
but the engineering department is requesting that the board establish that that the developer would need to prove that our sewer system can handle what you're providing, and that if there was any upgrades, both the sewer and the water, if there were any upgrades required to be able to handle that they would be financially responsible for that.
And Todd, how is that different than your normal process?
That actually is my normal process.
So we aren't requesting a waiver
We're
from.
not
Well,
requesting a
I'm just making sure things are,
Yeah, the only reason, I just know, and Jesse will know this, is that you can't impose a condition on a project, on a 40B project that doesn't exist for other projects. So I just want to make sure that we're not treated differently.
you're not,
Yeah, Yeah,
I'm not completely familiar with the 40B.
yeah.
Most of my reference is stuff going through the planning board. And if I was at the planning board meeting, I'd be saying these exact same words to developers. Nothing here is, and actually you've been to the planning board meetings, nothing I'm saying here is different than what I'd be saying there. Your site has a lot of sewage and water requirements. And you've shown us how you're gonna connect, but the next step is making sure that our system can handle what your demand. So I guess the first question was, are you getting the emails?
Yes, I just did
Okay.
today's talk.
And it sounds like it's simpler for me to have a document rather than read things out.
Yes.
So I will continue to do that.
Okay.
If someone could reply back just saying that they got them,
Okay.
Would it be easier for me to take his conditions and put them in the draft decision and then just check to make sure that, with you, that they're all in there?
Yeah, but
Jesse?
I'd like to get the latest email just to make sure that we get that.
Yeah, we
If you
have it.
don't mind.
I'll-
We're happy to redline
I'll
the
forward.
decision again.
It's mostly the same, but
Yeah, I got
just to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, what we'll do is Todd has some conditions he'd like to be in the decision. We haven't put them in yet, because the only conditions we put in were the ones that we extrapolated from the peer reviewers' comments. We'll take Todd's comments, add them to the decision. I'll make sure they're all located in the same section,
Yeah.
so that we can just go right through them, and they'll be in the same order as your letter, so
Okay.
we can just go right through the list.
I just want to make sure the board knows that I'm doing
No,
something.
I appreciate
And
it.
that,
I appreciate you coming.
and I appreciate the board giving me a chance to come up and speak.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So it sounds like we have to come up with an extension date and a date for the next meeting. And as I look at the calendar, I'm thinking we extend 15 days to the 29th of July, and we meet again on the 28th. That gives us the one day in there.
That's fine.
I'm looking towards you, Chris.
Yep, that should work, yep.
Jesse, that work for you, that Monday, the
28th is
28th? But we'll extend to the 29th.
Yeah, Tom, I can't do it.
Can't do the
On that
28th.
week.
That's okay, that's
Do-
what we
do
need to
next
know.
week. Next week or the week of August 4th.
We just took the calendar. Chris can't be here on the 28th. Chris, you're saying on August 4th you can do it?
Yep.
Everyone make August 4th?
I won't be here, but that's okay.
Well, you know it's not.
No, Chris and Paul will be here, that's fine. My concern about not wrapping this up and extending this was for this exact reason, that people were gonna be, out. So it's more important that the team be here.
You don't want to go beyond August. You have to go to August 4th. So we put a date
I
on
could
it.
do August 7th, but it's gonna be a heck of a drive. That's the only other day I'm out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So. But,
Well, what day works for you?
like I said, I think you guys can meet on the 4th and accomplish everything without me, or I'm happy to be here on the 7th. All right,
So are we talking August? Extending to August 5th and the meeting on August 4th?
Yep.
Is that okay with you, Sean?
Yep. That works for everyone?
Yep.
So do I have a motion to extend this hearing to August 5th?
I'd rather not, but I'd rather wait a few minutes if we can.
Okay.
There's other topics I'd like to cover.
All right.
Oh,
Could we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You as the chairman.
Is that okay? All right, Chris, I believe you had something else you wanted to discuss?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, back at the May 4th meeting at the library, back at the May 4th meeting, there was a fair amount of discussion about blasting, pre-blasting surveys. It was mentioned there that the applicant may accommodate pre-blasting survey costs. That was to be determined. So my ask now is whether the applicant would cover pre-blast survey costs for residents within 500 feet. There's 45 residents.
Yeah, I don't think we're prepared to do anything other than the blasting requirements call for.
Which is 250?
I believe it's 250.
Just to confirm, it's 250. Well, you're asking
Within 250 feet?
Yeah.
is
So
what the requirement is.
And here's why, Chris, because the process it's been implemented hundreds of times. So all of the entities involved, the insurers, the evaluators, the companies, they're all, the fire department, they're all used to this process. What I don't want to do is change a process that's so critical, right? That everything has been done before hundreds and hundreds of times, and I don't want to muck that up.
Okay. Keep it short, but as someone from the public just said a few minutes ago, and they said it very well. This project is being shoehorned in. You guys know far better than I do. It's not a good site for 100+ reasons. I take the applicant at their word. I know the applicant lives nearby, he's a longtime resident here. When we first opened this hearing back in January, the applicant got up and spoke, said it's going to be a good neighbor, it's going to be a great project. That's one side of the coin. And, you know, words are easy. Where it's not so easy is when the rubber meets the road and you have to reach into your pocket. You have to actually be a good neighbor, not just say you're going to be a good neighbor. Part of that means, you know, we've covered other things like, you know, landscaping, and maybe we can do something on Route 1. I'll bring that up in a minute. About pre-blasting, you're talking about a critical thing. Yeah. So this project will come and go. But like I said a little while ago, those residents are staying there. And it's the only house they have, and they're staying there. It's, as you said, it's blasting that happens all the time, and it's generally not an issue. And there probably isn't. I think we're asking these residents to go on, to take a lot on faith here. If it was my house that was right next door to this, where there was a lot of blasting, or even 260 feet away, we're not talking about hundreds of residents here. When you're 250 feet away, you're talking about 17, 18, 19 residents, homes. When you're 500 feet away, it's maybe double that. It's around 40, 42.
Let Chris address this, please.
I'm sorry?
No, I think that the point is, you know, this was reviewed, there's state standards, state regulations that we're meeting. If there was some professional opinion out there that there should be some extraordinary concern with this project, certainly that's something we would be concerned about, but this is, that's something that I've never seen requested by a board, and it's just, would be too cost prohibitive for my client to take on. So I appreciate the board's point, but it's just not something that my client's willing to do.
I see a whole lot.
Chris, maybe we could do just a couple quick things. So we are, overwhelmingly, our concern is obviously with the gas line, right? So we have a gas line that runs through the middle of our site. So I think you take some solace in the fact that everything will be so controlled to minimize impact to that. The beneficiaries are the people that are further away. Like, we're going to be 60 feet from the gas line. If we're covering people that are 250 feet away, we should have captured everybody that's within that impact zone. If I would feel better about just selecting specific homes rather than a 500 feet, right? Because then it becomes sort of from where. But if you want to suggest like that we add certain homes that you think are beyond the 250 feet that you're concerned about, I think that's a little bit more palatable for us to at least consider. But the 500 feet, I would think, is a non-starter.
Okay.
You don't want to consider any?
Because then you're going to be choosing favorites, and then they're going to be, well, why my house and why not yours?
Yeah.
You know.
Speaking for myself, I wouldn't go to, I'm not equipped, I'm not a blasting expert to pick this house but not that house. When I draw out, you know, you go to the GIS site on the Saugus page, you draw out the 300-foot radius and the 300-foot butters and the 500-foot butters. The 300-foot butters is essentially both sides of Forest Street. The 500-foot butters is both sides of Forest Street plus half of Braycart Road. It's an additional 8, 9 houses.
Well, and just keep in mind, it's as measured from the blast, so it's not from the property line.
It's from the blast.
So the sequence of events is we hire a blasting company, right? Because they're the ones that do all this work. They figure out what their charges are, where their drill locations are. They figure out where they're going to blast, where are they going to drill and split. So we've got to figure out exactly where those blasts are going to take place. Then the survey is done from that. So until we know where the blast is, we wouldn't know what that radius is. I'm just hesitant to do anything that changes well-established process, and the 250 has been there forever. So we're just very hesitant to change.
There are municipalities that go up to 500, Milton being one of them, however.
Yeah, sorry, just
I think
speaking
the
for
state
myself.
fire marshal is 250.
Correct.
It's disappointing to.
And are you just suggesting that we just do the pre-demolition survey at those houses and a post-demolition survey, or what are you suggesting that we
The
do?
cost of the pre-cost survey. So, so that part of the reason I'm asking this is because when this came up a couple months ago,
Yep.
we had some residents saying, that they had experience saying their house was damaged.
Mhm.
There was a woman, I believe, said she was 1,000.
Yeah, let's, because it could be good insurance for us if they're willing to let us in the
It was
home.
1,000 feet, she had significant damage from one of the other projects.
Chris, why don't we do this? We'll take it under advisement, because there is some benefit to us too in terms of just addressing any potential issues, that if someone claims that we did something, it would be great to have the blast survey. So just give us a little bit of time and we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
But it's measured from where the blast is,
It's,
not from the property line.
exactly, it's from where the charge is.
So that 250 would probably only take in half of what you're saying.
Maybe, I don't know exactly where they're blasting on the site, so.
Okay, yeah.
Excuse me. So what you're saying that if my house is on Bray Park Road and I don't get the survey done and there is damage to my house from this development, what recourse do I have in order to be able to get the repairs done to my home? Because my parents live on Oaklandville, and when they were blasting at the McDonald's, they felt it in their house. And that's a long way away. And once damage is done to my house, I'm a single person, I can't afford tens of thousands of dollars into any structural damage that would be done to my house. So, and it's very close. You're talking blasting in a very dense area.
That's why I'm
No, I
asking about
appreciate it.
this.
I appreciate it.
I
just
get
wish
it.
you could take it
It's a
into.
huge cost and it's a huge risk. So, take it under advisement, appreciate that.
Yes.
So the gentleman had said how it's not cost prohibitive for his client, but in reality, fingers crossed, we've got it nailed, right? Because we have to do tighter blasting because of the gas line, and then no one has damage, and technically, what is it gonna be costing?
Well, that's why he said, I think that they'll take under advisement.
Well, so, yeah, so
Try
I'm
to do
curious, like, cost out of your pocket to be proactively, just in case, is what, more insurance?
Well, let's be clear, it's cost not out of my pocket, right? I try to follow established processes and have reasons for doing things. So we have a well-established guideline that says 250 feet is the appropriate distance to do a pre-demolition survey. That's even excluding if you had other mitigating factors. So if I had a site with nothing on it, no other things of concern on it, that would still be 250 feet. In this case, we have a site that has a gas line on it. So we have a similar concern to what you're concerned about that's going to necessarily ratchet down how big a blast we can use. So the way it's managed is that you just use smaller and smaller and smaller blasts, which means you have to drill more and more holes. So it's manageable, but we're going to be managing into a much higher tolerance because of the on-site issues that we have.
Yeah.
So if 250 is the accepted standard when there are no on-site issues that require you to ratchet down your blast size, then 250 feet should be more than enough when you do have those conditions that require you to use smaller charges.
Yeah, theoretically, so you're saying about having an insurance or something in place for potentially expanding this rating.
No, what I'm saying is the drilling and blasting companies have insurers they work with all the time. They have the people that do the studies all the time. They are trained in predisposed to working with the state requirements, which is the 250 feet. Now, to Frank's comment, there are probably other municipalities that require more. I've never encountered those personally, so I'm just used to the 250. I just don't like to change process that's well established without understanding what the risks are. So, for example, my only concern is, well, if we get something that happens 400 feet away, or someone makes a claim 400 feet away, have we considered that in the process that we have? Like, does the insurance cover that? So we need to talk to the blasting companies to say, hey, this is not just up to us. We got to go reach out to the blasting company and say, what would it be? How involved would it be to expand this coverage to 500 feet instead of 250 feet? We don't know that right now.
Yeah, so part of that, I would guess, is that you'd be purchasing more insurance just in case.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that we have answered the question of Chris's concerns, that we're gonna take a very good look at this. We are gonna research it. We'll come back in whatever, we'll either send a memo or come back in a couple weeks as to whether or not the developer is willing to go beyond what is required by the law. I think doing the what-ifing is really a really bad thing to do here.
Not necessarily, this is high ledge. So it's not, it can be 250 in the state of Massachusetts, but 250 on dirt and sand is different than 250 on ledge and how it reverberates. I do like the fact that it has to be more microscopic blasting because of the gas line. But I'm basically saying, how much of it is it really a pain on your end to just in case be prepared? And then you don't spend money because you did it so fine-tuned and no one had damage, then no one has to be spending any money. Like, that would be the nicety. So you cover yourself as a CYA just in case and have yourself set up, and then nobody needs it. Thank God, I don't want to have to deal with repair. Like, so why would it be harm foul? I know you want to stay within like standard, but this is not a standard piece of property with that much lead.
Understood. We'll look into it.
Chair, again, we have said that we will look into this.
Okay. Satisfied with that, to look into it?
Yeah, I appreciate that, thank you. Just one more thing from me, Mr. Chairman. We got a copy of a restrictive covenant recently.
I guess you sent it up.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question is, Mr. Schumer, if you've had time to review that, any advice on what the impact is here?
I have, yes, I have. The Developers Council has submitted a letter addressing it, and I agree with their conclusion on that. The purpose of the restrictive covenant was essentially to manage construction impacts during the construction of that building, and there's nothing applicable now to the current project. There was a contention by Attorney Hill at the last hearing, and in his letter, that there's a reference in the covenant to something along the lines of obtain all permits under the zoning bylaw, and he took that to mean that it restricted them from going under Chapter 40B. I disagree with that interpretation, and I think the developers are. There's no applicability of that covenant to today's proposal.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else on the board anything right now? Anything else from the audience? Yes, sir.
I'll just speak quickly. Matthew Sherman with the Malden Anglers. Thanks. In the interest of time, it's late. I'm just going to submit stuff electronically, right? That's fine. I'll submit it to you and Stephanie.
Stephanie off of which she still has some issue.
Okay.
So if you could, do you have my email?
Yes. Yes, I do. The Hotmail account?
Yes, it is.
Yep. So we'll just turn that in.
And then just so when you send it to me, I send it out to the other.
Perfect.
Could you send it to us as well?
I'll send it to the board. I'll send it to you, Tom.
I got it out.
I'll send it to you. And
Do I have permission to share it with them?
it's whatever the law lets you do. Yep,
said
which
that
is
right,
fine.
right?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. Whatever the law lets you do. In summary, it's just real quick. Just to ask you to use your counsel, ask you to use your peer reviewers. We do bring up a couple. There are some, as we mentioned, there's some unresolved issues. That this is great. I think that tonight's was good. We still have remaining questions about the hydrology of the site, environmental protections on the site, some of the proposed waivers. To follow up with some of what Mr. Riley said and what your town engineer said, some of them are written very broadly. Just for example, 5.7 does not deal with just construction impacts. It's the use. It's long-term. It's the environmental performance standards for any use permitted by right or special permit. It's long-term. That's what protects the neighbors from pollution, noise, all those. So they're just some very broad waivers. I commend the questions about those waivers. Parking analysis, very similar numbers to what you heard from your council today, and the easement restrictions. So I'll just pass those along in the interest of time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Anyone else from the audience? Yes, Mr.
Just a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I just had a few questions. I've never seen a development like this, 40B development, Jesse focused in on it earlier. Am I correct to Jesse, there's gonna be a 40B on one lot, but then the office building's on another lot, but that's not considered under the 40B, and wouldn't that affect the parking? Can they use a lot that's not gonna be a 40B lot for parking and other issues? I've never seen anything like this in the town where that existed, that's all.
The office parcel, part of what we were talking about earlier, office parcel has to support its own parking. It has to comply with zoning.
Okay.
And the 40B can't give them any kind of waivers from this zoning requirement for the office space.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? All right, so if I have a motion, what I'd like to do is continue this to August 5th. And then,
You should continue to the 4th.
Yeah, we
no, we're gonna
hereby-
meet on the 4th.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was putting another day into this.
Yes, so we hereby extend the public hearing process to August 5th, and then you can continue to.
And we're gonna meet on the 4th.
There you go.
Am I saying it right? Did I say it wrong?
We'll submit that for writing.
Absolutely, no problem.
All right. Is that can I then the form of a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to continue till August 4th.
To meet.
No, continue to August 5th. Meeting on August 4th. You have to continue it.
Continue to August 5th with a meeting on August 4th.
Correct.
Correct, 7 o'clock, and we'll be here again.
To clarify the motion, you're continuing the public hearing to August 4th, 7 PM here. There's no need for you to continue the duration of the public hearing. That's extended by agreement of the applicant.
To the August 5th is
So I need
already.
to make a motion to continue to August 4th.
I just wanted to make sure that
August 4th.
one day was in there.
Yeah.
I know they had talked about that before.
Should I?
7 PM here. I
Should I
think it's,
resay it?
I think it's clear as stated.
Do you want to meet here?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
I'm gonna keep on looking for the secretary to do the roll. Mr. Norton?
Yes.
Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Federico?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Mr. Rosetti?
Yes.
And myself is a yes.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
patience.
Mr. Chairman.